Good afternoon, everyone. This is Carl Smith, Vice President of Operations at Now Micro. As we have guests start to join us for today's security webinar, we will sort of touch base a few times over the next couple of minutes while attendance begins to build, and then kick things off a couple of minutes after the hour. But thank you for those who have begun participating. And we will roll things forwards here in the next couple of minutes. Thank you. Again, good afternoon, everyone. As we wait for attendance to build, Carl Smith with Now Micro, we will begin here in another minute. So thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, everyone. Carl Smith, Vice President of Operations at Now Micro. Thank you very much for making time today to join us to review sort of the current state of security in the IT world, and then sort of an overview of how HP views protection against these threats. With us today, we've got Chris DeRozier from Tech Data and Jürgen Bayer from HP that are going to be our presenters. With that said, I will turn things over to Chris to begin, and then we will conclude hearing from Jürgen at the latter half of the hour. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those in the message board, and we will address those at the end. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and Chris, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carl. I appreciate it, and want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right. So today I wanted to spend a few minutes. First of all, thanks for your time. Hopefully everybody, I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and we were talking about all those things you never get to do, right? With the COVID and the virus, cleaning the house and kind of the honeydews on the weekend. And we're starting to see a lot of uptick from participation in events like this as people find the time, make the time to upskill themselves and learn about what's happening out in the world and some new technologies. And so my name's Chris DeRozier, and I'm the Director of Tech Data Security Solutions Business Development. Tech Data is a global solutions aggregation provider, and one of our best partnerships is with Now Micro. And so over the next few minutes, I wanted to share with you kind of the state of cybersecurity.
Is now joining.
What's happening out in cybersecurity, and then kind of update you on the landscape. So let me just go ahead and click through this. And so we'll spend a few minutes about understanding what the bad guys are doing and really what's happening out there and what the risks are. So, you've probably been on security webinars before, and there's always a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt thrown out there. And, to be sure, there's going to be some uncomfortable news here, but I think it is a lot better to kind of hear about what's happening versus not, right? The alternatives are a little ominous. So let's dive into that. First of all, I wanted to take a minute to just kind of share with you guys, what we're up against in terms of our own ability to defend ourselves. So this next couple of slides really speaks to our cyber labor shortage. And I'm assuming most of the audience here is in the Minnesota area or in the central part of the country to a minimum. And so what we're going to do is look at an increasing level of detail about this massive shortage that we're dealing with. So there is a massive talent crunch. You can see the stats on the screen there. 3.5 million jobs just by next year that are be unfilled in security, 2 million openings in the Asia Pac region, and then over 300,000 unfilled positions just in the US. And so this data is looked at from October 18 to September 19. So it's not super fresh, but I think the numbers tell the story. And as you out there are all looking to fill cybersecurity jobs, you're probably realizing they're harder and harder to fill. So if we look at the US from a global view and step it down to just the US, you can see in the metro area of New York, you've got about 20,000 openings. Philadelphia has 10,000 openings in cybersecurity. And this does not bode well for the US economy, right? We're already kind of dealing with the COVID situation, and trying to find the right resources for these skills is proving more and more difficult. But let's even take a look at the Minnesota area. And so if you go to cyberseek.org, this is a project that was run out of the federal government and the National Institutes of Standards, or NIST. They had done a research project where they looked at every state and figured out where the jobs were not being filled. And just in the Minnesota market, you can see there's over 8,000 positions in a total workforce of 17.7 that are employed right now. So it's a critical situation. And as we move through this, you'll kind of hear a little bit more about why this is so troubling. And I think at the end, I think
is now really exiting.
I think what's most important is what you can do about it. So the hacker industry is really systematically using a spray and pray technique. Over the last few years, they've really just kind of overwhelmed companies with sheer volume on attacks. And now what they're doing, you see the downtick from last, 2018 to 2019, they're kind of downsizing a little bit and getting much more specific in terms of softer targets. And I think the key element here is who's actually likely to pay. So instead of kind of a volume play, they're actually being much more specific and running a business here and being more effective and deliberate in who they're going after. So there's been a slight decrease, but I think the effectiveness is paying off. And then, you kind of ask yourself, well, who are these guys? And so, last year I had the opportunity to meet Mark Goodman, and you may not know Mark Goodman at all, but Mark Goodman is a former FBI internet crimes consultant who wrote a book in 2015 called Future Crimes. It's a great book, and he points out and kind of describes the market of what these guys are all about, how they're organized. And back in the day, hackers were independent freelancers, and now they're highly organized institutions. And so you've kind of got two different types of criminals, those that develop the malware and those that distribute the malware and kind of split the profits. So there's a full-blown kind of market, black market, on the dark web in terms of these forums on buying and selling. Some of these companies are set up, these criminal operations are set up, so they have full-blown, customer service and marketing and technical support, malware as a service. And so this is a realistic situation. And I think what makes it so difficult to prosecute these guys is because they're global, dispersed, they don't even know each other. When they execute and deliver these payloads and reap the benefits, they pay each other with Bitcoin. And then, the legal organizations, law enforcement is also distributed across the planet. So you've got jurisdictional problems. Who's actually going to be the one to make the arrest, right? If you've got contributors on the dark web that are contributing from every country. And so if we just kind of take a sample snapshot, obviously the nation states of Iran and North Korea, well-known adversaries, but let's take a look at China and see how they kind of target and go after. Who do they go after, right? So on the right, you're looking at a report from the 2020 CloudStrike Global Threat Report. And in there, they're pointing out, what are the kind of the key targets. So telecom, I know there's probably a lot of government and public sector folks on the call today. So you guys are a big target as well. Financial services, energy, obviously the military, right? Why spend all the money building an aircraft carrier if we can just disable it digitally? So, or just steal the plans, which actually happened, and save all that R&D expense and build your own just according to the blueprints. So this is super active, and this is what's happening out there, and so it's a pretty scary thought. The other part of it is, what are some of the tactics? How are these guys doing it? And so ransomware is very specific, very targeted. We're going to see a lot of growth in that this year in state and local governments, education. Also, the idea of files on spinning hard drives is falling away. We're seeing more attacks. There was actually a spike in Q3 last year of malware that's running on random access memory. So it's just kind of living on the firmware in active RAM. And so that makes it very, very hard to detect in terms of forensics and signature detection or hardware verification, timestamps. A lot of that is written to disk, and when it's running in RAM, you don't have a lot of that. So we're also seeing a heavy use of encrypted threats. So everybody knows about phishing, right? Don't click the link, right? When you click that link, what's happening is the payloads are actually downloading in an encrypted fashion. And so the firewall systems are not typically set up for deep packet inspection to be able to look inside of that. And so they allow that encrypted, and they trust that encrypted traffic. And so that becomes an attack vector that's commonly used quite a bit. We're seeing IoT malware volume rising significantly, and we will see that with the advent of 5G coming onto the horizon and being available in more markets. Part of the weakness around IoT devices is weak or hard-coded passwords, insecure network and interfaces, and maybe the operating systems that are running on those endpoints. We're going to see web attacks double from 2019 is what it should say. So, everybody is using Dropbox and G Suite and you name it, right? We're all using web applications. And a lot of those web apps are a significant risk, right? You've got to be able to defend against them. And there's every few years, the Open Web Application Security Project, or OWASP, publishes detailed analysis and threat warnings across a range of networking and other security topics. And one of the most popular is the 10 most critical web application security risks, which really identifies and categorizes potential risk against web applications. So hackers basically are increasing and doubling down on getting in through web application interfaces. So the other thing I wanted to point out is the issues with public sector. So every industry, of course, has their own issues. But when I was preparing for this conversation or this discussion today, I was asked to kind of look at the public sector space in particular. And what I had seen is there seems to be kind of a common trend. If you look at the far right, you'll see that between 2017 and 2018, cyber espionage is really at the top of the list. So this is, people that are just, using phishing techniques and miscellaneous errors. You have insiders using privilege misuse, web applications I just spoke about. So we're starting to see that as being kind of rampant issues, and we're starting to see, nation state large, enterprises that are kind of going after this and, compromising this data. So you look at the very top in the middle there, 23,000 incidents, 330 confirmed with data disclosure. So it's quite a bit. And there's some other figures to kind of justify, some of the data. But here's kind of the alarming thing, and this is about the discovery of these breaches. So, you see, if you kind of look at this chart on the right, you'll see, what 40–50% of all the breaches that are discovered take years to be discovered. And then it kind of goes down from there, 20, from months to days to weeks. But there's a vast majority that just take a very, very long time. And we're starting to see that in, kind of public spaces as well, very, very long times to even understand what took place. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ability to provide budget for, fraud activities and to even detect data loss prevention and other techniques around that. So what this does is this particular slide kind of deals with the decrease that I spoke about earlier. And this is really where you think, well, volume should not be confused with effectiveness. So we're seeing a number of high-profile attacks against state and local governments. As a matter of fact, last year there's a study that said, and I think it's quoted at the bottom there, the Sonic Wall study, that ransomware infected 621 schools and hospitals through September of last year. And it also brought U.S. cities to a halt in Arizona, where I'm from, Georgia, very well known, Indiana, Maryland, etc. And the other thing is, I guess you would, if you look at the overall global ransomware volume, we're starting to see a much more specific approach, as I mentioned. But that doesn't mean that the smaller companies are not immune as well. That's actually remained steady in the report that I call out at the bottom there. So they're consistently kind of going after and not really changing tactics on the smaller businesses, but they are being more specific as they move up market. And so what's going to be at risk for this year? I think they're going to be doubling down on healthcare. The personally identifiable information on many healthcare systems remain unsecured in many instances. So we're going to start to see, once that information is stolen and made available on the dark web, there's a lot of people that would be interested in buying your healthcare records. And so obviously, you want to mitigate against that, and I can talk about that in a few minutes. We're going to see mobile phones compromised quite a bit more, banking applications on those phones. There's a new kind of SMS technology that's coming out, and so that seems to be easily compromised, and it's called Rich Communication Services, which is really designed to replace SMS. And so we're starting to see some hacks against that. Artificial intelligence is not only used to solve cancer, but it's also used to commit crimes. And so we're starting to see this battle of AI develop out there as well. And then ransomware attacks could double. It's just too inexpensive, too easy to launch an army of bots and see what you can get. I mentioned earlier about disabling an aircraft carrier digitally. There's a whole other set of capabilities around that as well, where it's just real easy to do that. Cloud security is really misunderstood. So a lot of times people don't read their contracts with AWS and Google, and they don't understand what data they need to secure versus what the vendor is securing. So it's really important that you understand all of that. And then the last piece is we're going to see phishing and spear phishing, whales, all of these different techniques kind of move from email to the SMS and the video space. So there's a story about deep fake audio, for example, where you can synthesize somebody's voice, and there was a CEO that actually had a conversation with somebody and ordered a transfer of cash for about $250,000 and resulting in a loss. So a pretty big deal, and that's kind of some examples of what's coming with the AI piece. So it's not all doom and gloom. I would tell you that part of this is just being aware of it, right? Understanding what you're up against, understanding how organized these guys are, and then doing something about it. And so that's where Now Micro, I think, can really help you out. So with the partnership with Tech Data, we can deliver, and I think this is the most important thing that you could do, is really provide have yourself a vulnerability assessment. You need to understand, from a trusted third party, where am I vulnerable? And that really is the absolute starting point. And so Now Micro and Tech Data can actually deliver those services for you. So that's a key component. The other piece is security policies and security awareness programs for your people. And then the policies that kind of guide them on what's acceptable and what's not. Acceptable use policy, those types of policies. There's all sorts of policies. And that actually leads into the next piece about compliance and consulting and governance and risk. They're all very important. So, governance is how you control your data. Risk is the risk associated with that data, and then compliance, of course, is for your local compliance based on credit cards or NERC SIP for power plants, whatever it may be. So through Now Micro and through Tech Data, we have the consulting services to be able to help you understand where you're at in terms of governance, risk, and compliance. And then, of course, once you kind of stand up your moats, your gun turrets from the castle walls, you want to be able to test all that. And so vulnerability assessments are the starting point. You stand up your security controls and your policies, procedures, you put your folks in place, and then you test that with a penetration test. Most compliance requirements require that quarterly. But I think one of the most overlooked components is this last one, and this is the incident response. Who does what during a moment of crisis? So for those of you that are listening to my voice, I would ask you to kind of think about, when you come back to the shop, what are we doing? Do we have a playbook? Do we have a run book that says when we're breached, this is what we do? Do we call law enforcement? Do we call a specialist? Do we have somebody on a retainer for incident response with digital forensics and being able to isolate the breach and figure out what happened? So all that's really important. And again, through your relationship with Now Micro, we can provide consulting services to either review what you have or create a plan. So there's a whole set of services around that as well. So last piece is make sure that you're prioritizing cybersecurity in your budget cycles. Right now, cybersecurity is in the single digits in your budget cycles, but I can tell you that from my vantage point, we're going to see cybersecurity breaches becoming a bigger and bigger part of our economy. That has not been diminished by the virus situation. As a matter of fact, the bad guys are absolutely ruthless and utilizing that to their advantage. And then make sure that you're using a layered approach and defense in depth for security. And through Now Micro and Tech Data, we can help you to do that. So as we kind of drive into further and further detail, I'm going to move past the minimum viability security controls here, just for the sake of time. But these are just a couple of some of the things you must do. Strong password complexity and lockout in the upper right. Just a couple of key points: multi-factor authentication. Making sure you patch right away. So we've got a solution, for example, that can help you identify specific patches that are being discussed on the dark web that will affect you first. And so we can help solve that problem as well by spying on the bad guys and telling you what's about to hit next month. A couple other minimum viable security controls: administrative privilege restriction, right? Making sure that you have somebody watching the watchers. Security education awareness, making sure your folks don't click on the wrong things. And then, of course, a vulnerability assessment kind of starts the process. So with all that, all of these can be provided and kind of discussed with your Now Micro account team. But next, what I wanted to do is turn it over to Jürgen Bayer. Jürgen Bayer is with HP, and he's going to talk about endpoint security and some of the solutions there. He's one of their senior security advisors. So I'll go ahead and pause right here and thank you for your time. And Jürgen, if you want to pick it up, take it away. Thanks, Jürgen.
Thanks, Chris, for painting this great picture on the security landscape. Let me share my presentation real quick, and hopefully you can see it and hear me well through the audio. from an PC vendor perspective, security became more and more an important factor on our devices. And when we started years ago, it's the main criteria to choose a device were the specs. Over the years, we moved more to design, and but now there are two very important factors in mind of our customers, and this is security and of course the concern of the environment. So today I want to talk about how HP sees endpoint security and on our devices. And my name is Jürgen Beyer. I'm a security advisor at HP, working in the product category group in North America. So when we look at the security features on our endpoint devices, we when we look at the customer base as well, we have different needs for customers, and that's what we want to start with each of these features. So for all customers, they have in common, and that's what we provide, security out of the box. This is how our devices should be a minimum equipped in terms of security features when we talk about a commercial endpoint, desktop, notebook, workstations or mobile workstations. So for us at HP, security is nothing which is bolted on or as an afterthought. Security is already part during the design, and security is built in the devices, and it's even built in hardware. So every system our customers gets in their hands should have a good level of security already built in. But for some customers, this is not enough. They want to have a solution available which is out of the box, already pre-configured, which runs at default when the system turned on, and there is no management required because it's a customer who has let's say not enough manpower to manage each of the device individually, and there are probably not so many devices in this organization. So for these sort of customers, we bring a security edition, a Pro Security Edition, which means it's a bundle of hardware and software, which has already the best security on the device activated. We can provide to our customers. But for mid-market and enterprise customers segment, which are let's say above a 500 seat base, these customers, they require a solution which is managed. They want to have the insights. They want to get informed when a breach happened, and they want to react. These customers usually have a very strong knowledge on manage the devices, but they have lack of knowledge in terms of security. So they need a company supporting them to manage their device in a secure way, and to watch on security and identify the security risks and the mitigation. And this is where tech data, where now Micro and where HP come into place and support you as a customer on a managed security solution. So you do not need to have all the security know-how in-house. You can rely on your partners. But there are customers in the market, especially our large enterprises and governments. They do have the security know-how in the company, and they already have a very rich security environment with a SIEM system, SOC system, security policies in place and enforced. So what they are looking for is is the functionality of the tool integrated seamlessly in their environment. And here, that's for the HP Enterprise Security Solution with SureClick Enterprise, where we support the customer with this kind of needs. So that's just giving you a little bit of overview on the layers and the levels of security HP is providing with their endpoints. So when we look at the endpoint and the essential security, so what HP already delivers with the endpoint for free, we can see first when you turn on a device, SureStart becomes active. SureStart is our root of trust implemented in hardware. So this is the hardware piece we implement in our devices. Additional hardware secures the device right after turning on or even plugging in power. And we make sure that the level below the operating system, the firmware level, is secure and has not been modified. So SureStart is here the component, the hardware component, where we check the firmware level. And if something has happened, SureStart is also equipped with self-healing mechanisms. So we can already self-heal the device, we can mitigate the issue, and the user is good to go. Another piece we put in our devices in the case of say disastrous event had happened and the user has to re-image the system. They're usually starting the problem is with re-imaging is that not enough or knowledge is on the user side, or they're missing the important pieces, or IT help desk is not available. So we provide a feature where we can re-image a device from the firmware and do not rely, do not depend on any data on the system drive. SureRun falls into the category watch the watchers. So if a specific Windows 10 security feature like the Defender antivirus or personal firewall has been turned off by malicious software or by an attack, SureRun recognizes this and will turn on the security features right away. So the system is not left in an unprotected state. SureAdmin is our implementation to get rid of the BIOS password and implement instead cryptographic secure way to allow BIOS settings changes and give permissions to critical changes in the BIOS by using certificates. Now, talking a little bit more about software, we have here two components, SureClick and SureSense in our devices. SureClick is our way how we protect a device, not by detecting malicious attacks, malicious code, malicious software. We protect the device by isolation. This means dangerous activities like browsing the internet or opening attachments in email are executed in an isolated environment. We call it micro virtual machine, and any attack, any malicious code executed is executed in this micro VM and cannot see the host system. So every attack is contained in this environment, and when you close the environment, the attack is gone. So it doesn't matter what kind of attack it is, because there is no need to detect this attack. We just isolate this and in this environment and shield all the user data and identity information from it. SureSense is software as well, and And as Chris already mentioned, we see more and more artificial intelligence utilized to modify attacks. So for traditional, let's say, traditional systems to detect these kind of attacks, it becomes more and more difficult. SureSense is also based on artificial intelligence, and we use here the deep learning technology to identify malicious code which is not known, which has not been seen before in the wild, and gives us a better way to prevent from attacks we have not seen before. And all these software hardware pieces are shipped with our devices for free. So this should show our customers at HP we take security very seriously, and therefore we protect the user with devices right out the box, because now we see more and more that the endpoint is the first line of defense, especially working from home where the device is not integrated in a secure perimeter and it's operating in an unsecure environment. And when we have working in public environments, we also have this embedded privacy filter available for our devices, where we can limit the viewing angle so only the user sitting in front of the device can see the screen. Everyone else will be blocked out. So to give our users a little bit glimpse of what they can understand, or how they should understand HP SureClick, we give a license for free away which is valid till end of September this year, and every user can try out how SureClick Pro can enhance their security stance on an HP device or even on a non-HP device. When we're sharing this presentation, the link below can guide to the free software. So now, especially in the time of COVID-19, we are helping businesses, we are helping individuals to stay digitally safe, and especially when they are working remote. So at the beginning, I was starting talking about not only the products, also the services. And here again, I want to a little bit dive deeper into the service offerings and the bundle offerings. What our users can expect with Comet Lake CPUs or devices equipped with Comet Lake CPUs shipping end of June, beginning of July. We will offer HP Pro Security Edition. It is a notebook has of course all the essential security already in the system, already pre-installed, but we also add a free license for SureClick Pro, for SureSense Pro, so for this very advanced security solutions. And this is a solution for our SMB customers, smaller customers. They intend to have a secure system out of the box without managing it. For our customers with, let's say, a larger PC fleet with a large amount of devices, where they not only want to manage security, they also want to know about the level of security each device has, and they want to be informed right away when security incidents happening. Here, proactive security is the right choice. Proactive security is a service for HP devices and non-HP devices to bring more depth, more information into the IT department. And last, I will also talk a little bit about the SureClick Enterprise, so our offering, which we have available for large corporate enterprises who already have a security environment in place, and the tool needs to be integrated in their environment. So on the Pro Security Edition, which is SureClick Pro, SureSense Pro, so our security by isolation and security by deep learning, artificial intelligence. These two products will be combined with a free license and available on this specific PC. You will see the systems available by mid this year, so end June, beginning of July, on a 800 series elite book products starting, and other commercial devices following later. So this is the simple out-of-the-box security, which already has enterprise level of security tools pre-installed and activated. When I talked about the proactive security service, which is the right solution for medium business who need the complete defense on their endpoint devices, here we see SureClick Pro, SureSense Pro as well, but in combination with TechPulse, with a backend infrastructure which identifies the health protection on the endpoint device and can do threat assessment if anything malicious happened on the endpoint devices. So this is a solution which gives very good insight in what's going on in the fleet, on the specific endpoints, what's the current security status of the fleet, and also gives information on the threats which have been detected, and the system was protected by our software, the enterprise level software. So SureClick Enterprise, this is the software we brought in to HP with the acquisition of Bromium. So here we see SureClick in a level which is ideal for large corporate enterprises and government customers who want to keep security in-house, who don't want to outsource security. They do have all the security knowledge in-house, but they need an advanced level of security tools, and they also want to analyze in terms when threats happening, what kind of threats, and how to mitigate the threats in the future. So a complete ecosystem they already have in place, and where SureClick Enterprise can seamlessly plug in. So for HP, we advanced PC security from the past years, where we had essential security, and we equipped our endpoints with new ways to secure endpoints, where we are now offering also services. We offer security editions, so bundles and enterprise level security, which can integrate in existing environments. So HP, you can see HP, the PC vendor, working as a security company with covering all the customer segments we see in the landscape. So I hope this gives you a good picture of how HP is protecting the endpoint and protecting the endpoint not only with added software, we also protect the endpoint with included security hardware, like the endpoint security controller and SureStart, where we not only protect the device and detect any attacks, we can also recover, and that's very important nowadays. So here's an overview. I don't want to go into much details, but that's for later to share, and to have always a chart available to be reminded what kind of security tools HP devices have built in, where we protect the device, where we protect identity and the data. And everything on the security chart here can be remotely managed, which is very important for larger corporate and enterprises. So this is the deck I was able to share with you, and yeah, I want to open it for questions and answers.
Excellent. Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you, Chris, for the presentations this afternoon. I'm not sure, Scott, if there was any questions in the message box, or if there's any questions from the attendee population. We've got a couple minutes that we can address those. It doesn't look like there was any questions in the message box. Maybe I'll pause for a minute or two to see if there's any questions from the audience. If nothing, currently, please feel free to reach out to your Now Micro account representative. We can, connect with the presenters, that you listened to this afternoon, and circle back with any further information. We will also send out the link that Jürgen talked about in his deck. So look for that to come from us either later today or tomorrow. But if there isn't any questions, I thank everyone for your time. Again, Chris, Jürgen, thank you for your presentations. Very informative. We definitely appreciate you making time to speak to all of us. Again, thank you, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the afternoon.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everybody.